counting up? Okay, so now run in T-bars and give us a count. Thank you, sir.
Are you doing audio for this?
I have audio for this on the...
Are we doing video as well? How
We're
do you
doing
attach
video
it?
as well. I'll just put a link. Hey guys, we're back. We just got done with GDC. It's Wednesday.
This is end of day Wednesday, a big time jump, and so much has happened.
Oh my God.
So when we recorded the podcast yesterday, that was before we had seen anything. We weren't privy to any pre-release news or any of the briefings. No. First off, some things to talk about. Nvidia's event, no VR goggles.
Seemed like a complete waste of time.
I would dare call it a complete. Yes, it was a complete waste of my time.
How long was it? 2 hours?
It was an hour and 45 minutes.
And what did they quietly rolled out the Titan X this morning.
Yes.
They didn't show that yesterday.
No, yesterday was about one product, which the entire press conference was it tried to evoke the Apple. An Apple press conference.
Well, Jensen has tried to do that for years with mixed results.
This one really felt like it wanted to be the 2007 iPhone
Did
announcement.
they do one more thing?
Well, they did we've been working on this for 5 years. Today we're going to announce 3 things. They said, straight up. Today we're going to announce a revolutionary TV. We're going to announce a game console. And we're going to announce a supercomputer. 3 things. When you have those 3 tags up there.
Was it all the same thing?
It was all the same thing.
Oh.
And it was all the Shield console.
So
That's what it is.
The Shield is just an Android console, similar
Android
to
TV.
the Uyala, similar to the Fire TV, similar to the Razer thing.
Except it's Android TV, which is Google's new.
They're all going to be Android
platform.
TV next year.
Well, this year the only big one we know so far in the space is Razer. Razer has Android TV out. We saw that at CES. This is Nvidia's entry, which runs Maxwell. It's the Tegra X1, their newest mobile SoC. And it's Android TV, so it can do 4K, but there's no content. 4K 60, but
right.
no real content. It does have HDMI 2.0, all your the copy protection.
But it's not like that GPU is going to be able to drive 4K rendered stuff.
So in terms of actual games rendered locally. So the TV side, I think I think $200 is too much to pay for an Android TV style device when there's going to be competitors out there that'd be under $100.
And by the time the games take advantage of the hardware that they have in that box, the newer boxes will be available.
The Android games.
Yeah.
The other thing is that they showed off a bunch of actual, good quality graphics Android games. Doom 3 BFG edition. Crisis.
When did Doom 3 BFG edition? When did Doom 3 came out? Like 10 years ago now. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. Yes, they showed an almost decade old game.
Woo!
They showed running locally the latest Borderlands, but
the pre-sequel.
The pre-sequel. It looked like it was running at. They say 30 FPS, but it did not look as good as 30 FPS on screen. Crisis 3 running locally.
That's a nice looking game.
Multiplayer, but very controlled. They didn't show all the environments. They showed a simple multiplayer demo. And then running locally, Talos Principle.
You mean streaming?
No, this is all running locally.
Oh, Talos Principle? So they have CryEngine games running. That's impressive.
And, the stuff running locally was not... It was good, but not spectacular.
Yeah.
That was their... But it's the most that the Tegra can do. And the Tegra is a great chip, but... It is not what's in, and it may be even more powerful than Xbox 360, but it's not the PS4 or Xbox One or PC gaming.
Right, and it's $200 for this box. Like when you're competing against the Fire TV and the Uyala and all those other Uyala is a different thing against the Ouya. I mean, it's. You got to be the right price, and $200 is too expensive.
And then the third thing, that supercomputer.
Hold on, does it have apps? Does it have like Plex and Netflix and that stuff?
Has all that stuff. So that's Android TV part. Android TV part was the revolutionary TV, which when they first said it, you thought they were actually going to sell a TV. The game console part is the Android games. They'll have 50 games at launch. Half-Life 2, everything we've kind of seen before in. On the Android, on the Shield tablet, and the Shield portable, that stuff. And then
it's a Shield tablet without a screen, right?
With a better chip.
Yeah.
And then you have the streaming. So Grid, which is the thing that's been 5 years in the making, 150 milliseconds, what they targeted. Their billing service, subscription service, sounds a lot like OnLive.
Or Sony Now, PlayStation Now.
Or that. You'll be able to buy games to stream, for $60 for full pricing. There'll be 2 tiers of subscriptions. If you want 1080p 60, you'll need to pay for the more expensive subscription.
So is it an hourly? So wait, so they're segmenting based on resolution that they stream?
Yep.
How can you rent games? Is it like a rental thing, or is it just
you
purchasing?
You can choose two levels of subscription, and then as right now, you can also buy games for $60.
I don't.
When it launches in May.
That sounds like a fundamentally kind of terrible model.
Yeah, if this was $100, it would be compelling. It would be at least competitive. I wouldn't say compelling. Competitive at $100. At $200, you're stuck in this poor, just too cold. There's no one for it.
I just don't know. Yeah, if you don't care enough about games to spend $300 or $250 on a game console that runs games instead of streaming them, I don't understand why you would pay. Like, I would pay $50 for a streaming box,
and it does.
I don't need all
it does
the
do
onboard
in-house
graphics.
streaming, in home streaming, just like the Shield tablet does, just like the Shield portable does. It does in-home stuff with GeForce cards, but Valve has the Link, which is $50.
$50 is the right price to pay for that. Well, and in reality, the Link you're going to buy the controller too, so it'll be $100.
Sure. And this
which is super fair.
Yes, and this is for $200. You do get the Shield controller.
Do you like the Shield controller?
I think it's okay.
You've used it with the tablet, right? It's the same basic design.
And
as
you can
that.
plug it USB over to the computer and use it as a PC controller.
I'm not interested in that.
It's not the best gamepad.
Is it as good as the Razer gamepads?
It's at least as good as a Razer gamepad. And has a touchscreen as well.
Is it as good as the PS4 or Xbox One controller?
I would say no, neither of those.
Okay,
not as good as either of those. So that was Nvidia's event, and then today we saw a ton of stuff. We'll have videos for everything. I don't think we want to talk about everything. We want to talk about.
I think we want to give context to the stuff that we saw. That we saw other stuff. First off, Titan X is just the same core as G980, but Titanized, way more stream cores, basically.
Sure.
Okay.
And bigger memory buffer.
And $1,000.
And it's the Titan price range.
Okay.
So we saw the new latest Omni demo.
I think we should skip all the peripherals. Okay. I don't think the peripherals matter.
I think there's only 2 big demos in terms of the VR space. Everything we saw today in GDC was VR.
Yeah, it was either VR or accessories for VR. So we saw the Omni treadmill, which was actually, I have to say, was much better than last year. It's still not something I'm stoked about.
Wait for a video.
Yeah. We saw an update from 6th Sense that was actually pretty awesome. That was really good.
That. Yep.
We saw an update from the Razer VR, the OS VR dev kit thing, which was still super rough.
Very rough.
And then we saw Morpheus, the new version of Morpheus.
Well, the last other thing was the Crytek demo.
Oh, right.
But the 2 actual things I think you guys care about, latest Project Morpheus and Valve Steam VR.
Yeah.
Let's do Project Morpheus first.
Hold on. Can we talk about Steam Link for just a sec before we do any of that
Steam
stuff?
Link.
So Steam Link is a $50 box. It lets you stream from your gaming PC in your house to any TV in your house. Wireless or wired. They said it's dependent on the routers. They expect they'll have a list of routers and stuff that works reasonably well. They expect that the community will pick that up and have here's the router to buy if you want your Steam Wi-Fi working well. Wired, they're saying less than 10 milliseconds, really low latency. The video quality that they were streaming was pretty exceptional. I didn't see any artifacting in even translucent smoke and stuff like that.
I saw artifacting in the Mordor one pretty heavily, but they're also running on a 4K TV.
Right, and the color reproduction was a little bit different between the monitor and the stream, which could be because of the different TVs, or it could be because of problems with the stream.
Controller changes to the controller, which will be sold later this year, $50.
Yeah,
they added a thumbstick to the bottom left.
I think that's a great add.
Yep. So as opposed to it just being 2 touchpads, you have thumbstick on left, and then you can use touchpad on right.
Well, so it means that for things that you don't want one-to-one motion for, like moving forward and back, you can just use the thumbstick and set to the speed that you want, rather than having to keep lifting your thumb up.
Nothing else. I mean, the thing they're going to push with that is users creating profiles for games, and the best profiles being surfaced at the top. A lot of user-generated type things.
They talked a ton. The game that they demoed with the controller was Unreal Tournament, the new pre-alpha one map thing that Epic released on Wednesday. And the speed on that was really amazing, compared to a thumbstick.
Having one-to-one control over the mouse cursor, I'm using air quotes, with your thumb, allows you to pan left and right really quickly. I think the precision needs practice. I'm not going to say it's not as good as a mouse.
It's tough to say we used it for maybe 3 minutes each. I'm interested to spend more time with it. I was able to do snap 180 turns while I was moving forward, and then snap back ahead without any kind of juddering or transition, just like I would with a mouse. I thought both of those things were really good. I'm not super interested in Steam machines. I think I'm probably not the target market for that. They're saying that they will have mid-range, low-end Steam machines that are at the same price points as consoles, and I assume that those, looking at the machines that they had out, those will be like Intel Nuke style boxes that are integrated graphics. With low-end CPUs.
Alienware one, discrete graphics, $500 for $450, and they had a Falcon Northwest, the Tiki system as well.
So the overall theme of so we talked to Gabe for a little bit. The thing that he basically said is, look, we're always looking to push PC gaming forward. All of these things were designed to do that. They want to have PC games in the living room, and I think that a $50 accessory that lets you play PC games in the living room is a wonderful device. I think that's really promising.
Okay,
VR.
Morpheus.
Yeah, Morpheus.
Morpheus demo. The demo, I think the big story here is that they showed gameplay. How you would actually interact with the world with the Move controllers,
as opposed to like scenes that you kind of observe and maybe interact lightly with.
Yes, and the gameplay here was a shooting game.
It's called the London Heist. Is the demo? It was made by Sony's London.
So positional tracking with the Move controllers allows you to do things like fire and aim down the sight of a pistol and reload by tapping the two together, moving the two Move controllers.
Literally picking up a clip, holding it up next to the gun, and it just slots into place.
Which I think it sounds like a simple thing, but it adds a lot to the experience.
More than that, because the Move controller is full 6-axis movement and is translational as well, you can do things like hold the gun up over cover while your head's down and just kind of spray and pray. Or you can aim down the sights like you would with a real gun. Now,
the things that don't change, for example, if you play a game like Call of Duty now and you press a right click to aim down the sights, it's a toggle, and that not only just moves the model up but also changes depth of field and focus. FOV. This doesn't happen.
No,
because they don't eye track, so everything's you can aim down the sights, and it does help. It also called into exactly just how difficult it is to aim without aiming down the sights.
So this is something that Valve, they had tracer rounds in the guns, which made it a little bit easier. But this is something that the Valve demo did exceptionally well, and I didn't realize that Sony did kind of poorly at until I'm thinking about it now. The distance from camera for the gunplay in the London Heist, the gun felt like my arm was about a foot longer than it actually is. In the Valve demos, which we'll talk about in a minute, they did a really good job of keeping the representational size of the objects appropriate for the scale of the world and what you expect, what your brain anticipates.
And I think that's largely because the Valve tracking demo and even the Sixth Sense tracking demo, their peripherals are more precise.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool sequence. Some cool storytelling stuff. We both banged into a wall behind us.
It was incredibly dense storytelling. Like it's something we've talked about on Still Untitled some, but they opened with a setting where you're sitting there talking to a guy, and he's threatening you, and he calls you out for making eye contact, which is something that you absolutely couldn't do, or you could, but it's not convincing in a traditional game with a controller. And when you're looking at him, studying him because he's interesting looking, and then he yells at you.
Yep.
And like that really pulls you into the experience. They also transitioned from sitting to standing in that demo, which is something that we haven't really done a lot of.
There was a handler that literally took the chair away from you after you stood up, so you wouldn't knock into it.
But in that sense, it's also a very controlled demo that is not going to be representative of how you're going to actually use this in your house.
Yeah, and I believe the Sony thing is going to be a couch experience. It's going to be you're sitting on the couch and maybe able to stand up. Like in the shooting part of it, you weren't encouraged to walk around, and you were doing the crouch move. So if you imagine you're sitting down, the couch experience, and the game developers and designers will have to kind of accommodate this, for driving simulations, for even for first-person shooters. Give moments where standing up makes sense to enhance the immersion, but then the default position maybe is sitting down.
Well, and especially with the Sony Eye camera, the PlayStation Eye has a relatively short vertical field of view. So if your room's small, you won't be able to stand up and sit down and be in the sweet spot for the camera.
Morpheus also had 120 hertz, and there's only one demo that had that, which you manipulated a virtual controller, PS4 controller. Now, you demoed that and get to try that. How did that make a difference, and how accurate was that?
So the thing that... First off, I want to say they're doing interpolation on the others, essentially interpolating up So they were rendering the same scene and then warping and doing some perspective skewing stuff on every other frame to basically fill in the extra half of the frames. I thought that worked really well. I didn't notice any kind of artifacts or judder. Like, there was a little bit more noise around the places where you need edge anti-aliasing is the best way I know to describe it. So if you look at, like if you're sitting, if this was a virtual world, places where there's hard edges and there's a sharp transition between dark and light, on the interpolated sequences, there was a lot of noise there. So it looked like you needed to run some anti-aliasing to kind of smooth those hard edges out. With the 120 hertz, that was much less pronounced. It was a little bit of a simpler scene, but I was able to do full side to side as fast as I could. I was not getting any kind of comb artifacts or any weirdness with that you do get if you do like a quick head shake. It was good. It wasn't. We went to see Crescent Bay immediately following that with CryEngine, and it wasn't a market improvement. Like 90 hertz to 120 hertz, I don't think I would be able to tell the difference if I was A/B testing. 60 hertz uninterpolated, 75 to 90, you can definitely tell. Yeah. So like, I'm also incredibly skeptical of the PS4's ability to generate 120 frames per second on anything that's going to look, that's going to look like a modern console game. It's one of the things that we saw in the Valve demo is that actually your brain is much better at filling. Your brain just says, if you present it with a low poly, low detail environment, your brain just says, okay, I'm in a cartoon now. That's cool, and it kind of fills in the rest of the detail. So I'm not as worried about that now as I was before. I think the low poly thing that Valve showed, that Oculus showed at CES, with the birds and the spring and the trees and all that stuff, is also representative of that. So like, I think the takeaway from today for me is that low persistence displays and high refresh rate, along with flawless motion tracking, is much more important than actual visual fidelity of what you're looking at. Sure. Like, you can look at flat shaded polys and they'll look badass in VR.
Exactly. So the Valve demo. This is HTC Vive. That's the headset. We weren't allowed to shoot video or get photos of someone wearing the headset, but we do go in at length to discuss it afterward on video, which is going to be on the site very soon for podcast listeners.
The Valve thing is my new high bar for VR.
It is a high bar, and it's a high bar not necessarily because of the HMD, the visual fidelity, or the display, the screen door effect, or the field of view, but it's a high bar because of the tracking, and the tracking of both your head and also the tracking of the controllers.
Unlike everything else we've used that does motion tracking of controllers especially, there was never a moment where it kind of fritzed out and I lost track. And occasionally you'll see like a motion thing blast off in the distance, then come flying back. None of that. Yeah. When he held the controller out to me, so you sit down in a chair, they strap a belt around your waist, and the belt helps manage the cable because there is one big thick cable that goes back to the computer. And then you put the goggles on, put a pair of earphones on, and the tech in the room handed you a couple of controllers. And it's calibrated so finely that when you held the controller out in space, you just reached out and grabbed it. You couldn't see your hand in VR, which is weird. But when you expected to touch it, it was there, and it was spot on. The Sixth Sense guys did something close to this, but theirs wasn't as precise, anywhere near as precise as the Valve demo that I saw.
And the cool thing is that means that as long as you have devices that have those sensors, and the sensors are probably the expensive part, you can track anything in VR space.
The sensors aren't the expensive part. They're just optical sensors.
Then you can track anything in a VR space.
Anything that you can put power on.
Anything you can put power
and transmit data
and
back from.
Calibrate the sensors properly.
Right.
So not a mesh, for example. It needs to be a solid, a fixed arrangement of those sensors.
And the precision on those sensors, like we were told that the difference between a sensor being calibrated and not being calibrated is the difference between like an extra micron of 100 microns of solder on the sensor that glues it to the board.
And the big difference, which we talked about in the video, in terms of their positional tracking versus something like Oculus is, which uses a camera face at you to detect IR sensors, same with Project Morpheus, is that the sensors are on what you wear and what you hold. And what the sensors are detecting are lasers, high frequency pulse lasers, and doing the math in the back end to triangulate positioning. And you can add more of those lasers, just like GPS, we can add more satellites.
But they told me that as long as you have a 5 points on 3 or 4 sensors, that's enough data to tell you what you need to know
I'm going to put
for the
sensors
headset
on
position.
Everything. There are going to be games where and experiences where you can get, it's called Lighthouse, the laser projector. You can put that. Imagine putting that all throughout your house or in a warehouse and environment, and then not only wearing goggles, but also and then having controllers, but having these type of sensors on other objects, on Nerf darts. And then they're represented.
Well, Nerf darts. So the sensors actually have to be smart. I don't know if the Nerf darts would work.
Sure, but you powered and
you could put them on. You could put them on gloves.
You can put on gloves, knee pads. You can. Other people can have the sensors.
It needs to be something that's rigid. Is the only criteria that I got.
There's no. I don't think there's any reason why 2 people couldn't be in the same virtual space in the same room.
Absolutely, and that's actually a key point. The lasers themselves are dumb. It provides a fixed frame of reference. When in the room that they do testing in, they have 6 or 8 HMDs hooked up in one room, and they all work off of the same lasers. There's no cross contamination or anything like that. You don't have to worry. It's not like with the early Oculus stuff where if you got your HMD into somebody else's field of view, then bad things happen. It just works. I haven't been as excited about something as I am about this in a really long time. The fine details that they got right to produce a sustained sense of presence. We've had tastes of presence before. The first Morpheus demos, I moved my knees. I saw my knees move in the game. I thought, oh, I get this. This is fun. I want this to happen more.
Yeah.
And this was sustained for 18 or 20 minutes. The entire way through, it was an amazing experience.
And when you take off the HME at the end, the Vive at the end, it is jarring.
Yeah.
That you're suddenly back in that room.
I was sad.
You forget that was the room you were in.
So they're shipping dev kit now or soon.
Spring for dev kit.
Right. And then retail end of year.
For the HTC version.
The HTC version. And they explicitly said, look, you can't expect people to build games, especially, and they're really going after indies. It's small teams. You can't expect those kind of small teams to build games and not know when the product's going to be out. This was the only dig that they took at Oculus that I heard. You can't hold the developers and say, okay, we're going to release it when it's done. And if it's a small team and they spend 6 months working on it, then they're completely boned if the HMD doesn't come out. So
I have no doubt that Crescent Bay, like we said, even as of September, it was a 6-month-old prototype. They've got something working.
Yeah.
They know what people are saying about Steam VR and HTC, and they have a lot of money. So it's a race. Do you think? I mean, Oculus. There's clearly a lot of collaboration between Oculus and Valve over the years. I don't know if that's still the case now that everybody's making headsets. Mm-hmm. But do you think Oculus got out of the way because Oculus wasn't really showing anything new at GDC this year? Yeah, and maybe they weren't ready. And Crescent Bay has only been in public, 2 places so far.
Yeah,
CS and Sundance, and a lot of people who work at Oculus right now worked at Valve. Losing Abrash knows everything they did. So, and they're they both want VR to be very successful. They want people to buy into it, and they're going to problem solve on their own. They don't want one product to suck because it's going to sour everyone.
It's a situation where you can plant more turnips. You don't have to try to squeeze blood out of the existing turnip.
And I don't know what Valve's ambitions are, but they are a game company, and the game demo they showed, because they know how to make games, the Portal demo they showed really had me believing in them as making the first killer VR game. Because Oculus, even though they're picking up people to make a studio, it's all simple games, and at
least so far. The other thing that was interesting is there were no virtual cockpit games from Valve. So virtual cockpit games have been a mainstay of VR demos. We didn't see any today, I don't think, actually.
No.
So I mean that's a refreshing change, and most of our demos were standing demos today. So yeah, I've never been more excited about virtual reality than I am after. This was a big day. This is like. I was around the first for the 3D accelerator revolution, and like the first time you plugged in a 3DFX card and fired up GL Quake and saw what 3D accelerated graphics looked like compared to your old 320 by 400, software rendered, smudged over, dirty looking games. It was a moment that you were like, oh, okay, this is going to be a thing that's going to change things, and we've had those experiences up until now. But I think that they're actually close. Everybody was hinting that they're going to show games at E3. So Sony and Valve both strongly implied that we'd see actual software at E3.
Yeah. I hope HTC can make enough of these sets.
I'm sorry, it wasn't Valve that said that. That was Razer that said we're going to see games at E3. So Valve didn't say anything about E3. Sony said we're going to see games at E3, or implied. I can't wait. I want more.
It's very, very exciting.
I would have gone right back into the Valve demo again had they let us run it twice.
Yeah, they're letting very few people see this.
Yeah.
We'll have Jeremy on the podcast hopefully next week to talk more about VR. We just wanted to get this brain done literally an hour after we tried the demo.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.